The story of David is presented here not to highlight his sinfulness, but rather to help us to understand how sin enters into our life and takes hold of us. It is a story which invites us to reflect upon man's sinfulness, man's manipulations, God's mercy, God's forgiveness, God's compassion. And today I wish to highlight two aspects from this very beautiful story presented to us of David and his sin with Bathsheba. The first is the dynamic process of sin. How does sin enter into our life? How do we get tempted? And how do we fall to our temptations? The story helps us to understand that all our five senses, our eyes, our sight, our ears, our hearing, our nose, our smelling, our tongue, our tasting, and our skin, our touching. These are the five senses through which we begin to receive information of the world. When I see an object, my eyes are busy like the camera clicking photographs of what I see. And these objects, these photographs are transferred to my brain. The brain begins to process these photographs, this information that I hear, the taste that I have, the smell that I have, the touch that I have. The brain begins to process these informations. And once the brain begins to process this information, the brain begins to stimulate my emotions, my feelings, and prepares my hands and my feet for action. And this happens in a fraction of a second. It happens so fast without us even understanding the entire process. And in no time, we are tempted, or we feel tempted, we say, and we are in the sin itself. David was taking a walk on the terrace. His eyes saw a woman taking bath, busy clicking photographs, his mind processing all those photographs, his emotions being aroused in him, his hands and feet ready for action. And in no time, David is in a deep sinful situation. We can call this as a dynamic process of sin. It happens to each and every one of us. And all of us who go through temptations in life, we call them temptations, but actually these are processes of life that are happening to us each and every moment. And that is why, brothers and sisters, good for us to realize how these temptations are generated in our life, what is the process that happens in our personal lives, so that we can take control of our senses, our minds, as well as our behaviors. And that is really overcoming the temptations that come into our life. I cannot stop my eyes from seeing things. I cannot stop my ears from hearing information. But I can do something with the information that is being processed in my mind. I can do something about how I allow my emotions to affect my behavior. And therefore, each one of us has the capacity, not only with God's grace, but also an inner capacity to take care of our emotions and our behavior. So to put it very simply, the dynamic process of sin, the senses collecting information, the brain processing the information, stimulating our emotions, activating our hands and our feet for action. The second aspect that we can talk about today is the cover-up operations that we do in our personal lives. We see this happening in David. when he got information that Bathsheba was pregnant, a certain fear enveloped him. A certain fear gripped him. And now his mind was on how to cover up my sinfulness. And therefore, what does he do? He concocts a plan in his mind. He sends for Uriah, gives him a nice dinner party, tells him, go and spend time with your wife. You have been battling in the battlefield, hoping that he will find an alibi for Bathsheba's pregnancy. To his misfortune, Uriah is an honest and honorable man. The next stage is for him to make Uriah drunk, so that he may, in his drunkenness, desire to be with his wife. That plan of David fails. And there David goes with the third part of his plan, sends him back to the battle with the instructions for him to be killed in the battlefield. There are three things that happen to each and every one of us when we sin in our life. The first one is denial. To deny, I have not done this. I did not do this. I did not take this. We all have a tendency to deny our sinfulness. The second one is to project our sinfulness, to put it onto someone else. That person did it. That person did it. I am very clean. And the third one is to justify our sinfulness, to give reasons why I have sinned. Oh, because of that, I did this. And because someone said something, I reacted in this way. Brothers and sisters, denial, projection, and justification only delays our acceptance of our sin, delays God's forgiveness, compassion, and mercy. And therefore, the story of David today is a wonderful story for each and every one of us, sinful in the sight of God, to how we can handle our own temptations of life and how we can respond to our own sinful behaviors. Confronted by the prophet Nathan, David says, I have sinned. And God says, I have forgiven you. Acceptance is the best process to receive God's forgiveness and compassion.